Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and as you know now, because we are in our 31st consecutive year of the Writer's Block, I talk to writers about their craft, what they're working on, what they've created in the past, what they're planning for the future. It's a wider net than just writers, however. We have had on sculptors, painters, musicians, actors, as I say, a wide net. So if you have an idea for someone with talent who might be a good fit for the Writer's Block, writer or other brand of artist, watch for our address at the end of the program. We'd be very happy to get your suggestions. I also want to remind you that the Writer's Block is a product of cable access television. It's a wonderful community service used by many, many here and transmitted all throughout the universe now on YouTube. And you don't get this service with Dish. So you stick with cable, you stick with the Writer's Block and 1623 Studios. I'm very happy to say this evening we do have a writer, Karin Gertsch. Hello, Karin.
Hi, John. Nice to be here.
Welcome back to the Writer's Block because you were on in 1997.
A few years ago.
Yeah, a few years ago with a book called Cape Ann. Would you hold that up, please? I want to make sure I get the Cape Ann and Vicinity, a guide for residents and visitors. That was produced in connection with our 375th anniversary. And I noticed it's still on Amazon. So, our
Still
viewers,
a few copies.
yes. Now, just in case our viewers don't remember the details of your background from 1997, can you bring us or remind us of those details, especially because they're so interesting about how you arrived here in the United States and then what happened afterwards?
Right. Well, I left Germany in 1952 and came by ship to Ellis Island with my grandmother and lived in New York City. And I remember hearing English for the first time and not understanding one word anybody was saying. And so I had to learn English. And my father was in the military. We did a lot of traveling. We were all over the United States and Germany again. And 13 schools in 9 years, constantly being plucked up and put back down again, like a seedling. And so when I wrote this book in 1997, it made me feel grounded to this area, rooted to this area. And for the first time, I felt at home somewhere, which was a big thing.
You were how old when you arrived here?
6.5.
So
6.5.
You were speaking fluent German at the time.
Yes.
Do you speak any German still?
Absolutely. I never lost the language. And the reason is because my grandmother lived with us, and my grandmother insisted that at home we speak German. And my mother said, we are in America and we speak English. So I was speaking English out there, and at home it was always German. And later at Harvard, I took German as my foreign language and took intermediate and advanced, and I got the grammar. So that gave me more, body to the language, but the speaking helped tremendously.
Your mother was German?
Yes, my mother was German.
Father American.
Yeah, father was.
And then what happened after that?
Well, I met my husband on the train in Manchester and settled down here in Essex, where I've been for 50 years. This was our 50th anniversary this year, and we had a nice trip planned. And we ended up on an Adirondack bench out at Wachusett Mountain with our picnic lunch. So that was a little different than what we had on our agenda.
Before we get to your more recent book, Nora's Adventure.
It's Flora Flora.
Flora, Flora. Yes, Flora. I want you to say something about your education.
Okay, well, because I'd gone through so many schools, my education was very fragmented, as you can imagine. Sometimes I would be repeating the multiplication tables again, or sometimes I missed things that led into algebra. And with all the traveling around, by the time I graduated from high school, I did not want to continue schooling. And my parents insisted I go somewhere for 1 year. So I went into Boston to a secretarial school for 1 year. And years later, when my first child arrived, I said to my husband, I'd like now to go and get a college education. And I went to North Shore Community College.
Hey,
Yes. And graduated with honors. And one of my teachers was Peter Foss from Rockport, a
wonderful.
dear man. And I did a lot of writing in his class. And so then when I graduated from North Shore, they transferred all the credits to Harvard University, and I got my undergrad degree there. And I was commencement speaker at graduation. I wrote the speech from a dream I had the night before. I came to breakfast and I said to my husband, last night I wrote the entire commencement speech in my dream. He said, write it down quick before you forget it. And so I did. And I submitted it thinking I'd never hear from them. And when I came home a couple of days later from shopping or wherever I was, he said, Harvard called. I said, oh, stop kidding me. But it was true. So I delivered the speech to 700 people at the American Repertory Theater, my moment in the limelight. But the good thing was it really gave me the confidence to speak to groups and get in front of people. And I wasn't afraid, you know.
When did you graduate from Harvard, Karen?
Oh my, 1992. I was 46. And I felt very old at the time. But it wasn't too old, actually, looking back there now. No.
Yeah.
But it made me a better parent. I really think it made me a better parent because my children saw me going to college and studying and how important education was.
Now, I want to turn to the book now and get the
Sure.
title right. Flora Has an Adventure.
Yes.
Karin Gertsch. And I'll hold that up. You can hold it up. We'll insert
We'll both hold them up.
a graphic at this point
Yeah.
in editing. But I'd like you to talk a bit about how you got the idea for this and how long a process it was from the idea to publishing.
Wow. Well, at the time, I did have a career other than writing. After graduation from Harvard, I ended up in social services and worked with a lot of low-income people, various services, including education, GED prep and ESL and all of it, workplace education. And when I retired from that, I was home, and we have chickens here on our little Christmas tree farm in Essex. We do have a Christmas tree farm. And so I was observing these chickens every day, and I named them for the first time ever. We named chickens. And I pretty much watched them, and I realized that chickens are like people. Chickens have personalities. They fight, they argue, they bully, and they're nice. Some are nice, they're very sweet, they're too sweet. And some are very courageous, like Flora. She's very courageous. And this chicken lays green eggs. In reality, she lays green eggs. And she can read and write, according to the book. She can read.
Use a computer.
Yes, but she went with me to the Essex Public Library for a children's program, The Real Chicken. And so we let her run around in the library, and she surely climbed on top of the computer table and started pecking on the keyboard. And from there, I, of course, turned it into the chicken actually writing something on the keyboard. So the reader has to read the book to find out what she wrote. But she's a very bright hen, as you can see.
Is Flora still with us? Excuse me. Is Flora still with us?
Well, this Flora would be 7 or 8 years old now. So we have a new Flora, and Flora is an Americana hen. And the Americanas can lay pink, blue, or green eggs.
Really?
And they're lovely, and they have wonderful orange yolks, and they taste terrific. So they're well worth having if you have a flock of chickens. So now I've become a chicken person, and we still have hens. We don't name them now though, but she's cute. So someone made her for me, so I'd have a chicken to take to reading programs for children. And we did a lot of reading programs before COVID-19 hit. In fact, I had a wonderful program planned with Head Start in Gloucester for their spring book fair, which never happened. I'm hoping next year it will.
Can you take the book and read parts of it, or a part of it that sort of sums up the tone and the playfulness and the courageous theme of Nora being at the library?
Well, here's one where she is running around the library and the children are following her. And she continued to meander her way back to the small room nearest the entry door. Here she jumped up on the computer table and pecked on the keyboard. Flora turned her head this way and that way, looking at the many faces watching her. Cluck, cluck, Yahoo! This is great, Flora said. That's one page.
Oh.
And people have said to me, well, you have more language in your book because it's for children preschool to first grade. And they thought, well, you have more language, some big words. And I can remember my children loving books that had big words. What child doesn't like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious from Mary Poppins?
So this is for preschool to first grade?
Preschool to first grade. Yep. So it's from 4 to 8. Could be also the beginning of second grade. My husband Emil goes with me to all the programs. He carts Flora for me and my materials, and he loves operating projectors and things while we're doing the program. So we went to the Beeman School in Gloucester and did a wonderful program with a couple hundred children by the time the day was over. So,
I bet they loved it.
Oh, we did. We all had so much fun. It's fun. I love doing it. Yeah, so.
Tell me where the book is available, Karin.
Okay. I always like to say the local bookstores. I like to promote independent bookstores. So if they're not on the shelf, the bookstores, any favorite bookstore can get it for you. The bookstore in Gloucester, Beverly Farms bookstore. Of course, it's at Barnes and Noble. It's online at Amazon. So it's pretty much available wherever you want it. All you have to do is ask for it.
So one of the nice not surprising, but striking features of the book is the wonderful color pictures.
Yes.
The color pictures. Where were they sourced, and who painted them?
Right. Well, I do not know the name of the artist because this is a New York publishing company, Austin Macaulay Publishers in New York, but they're also a British company and in Australia. And their artwork is done by internal employees who are artists. But the book was published in New York, and the artwork actually, I believe, was done in the UK. I'll never know who the artist was. I did ask, but they said, well, someone on our team.
It could be half people and half robots.
They're
So
robots, exactly.
I think the imagery is very, it's effective.
Thank you. Well, and I love the cover. This red truck, by the way, this red truck, someone told me, I think it's a 1953 Ford, maybe. And there's a truck just like it at Russell Orchards in Ipswich, next to the barn. It's got weeds growing through it and a tree maybe, but it's sitting there for any children who want to see the real truck at Russell Orchards.
Well, I'm glad you gave them a plug. That's a wonderful orchard to visit.
That's great.
Right about this season too, the fall.
Yeah. So,
Yes, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say that when everything came to a halt with the actual marketing and promotion and sharing the story with children and families all around us, I went back to the writing table and started writing because I had to do something. I was frustrated by all that. So I finished a novel. It's a New England novel, older family, husband and wife, very happy, appears on the outside, but she's got issues and wishes that she has had unfulfilled for a long time. And it's all about a diary that's kept in her gardening books found by one of the daughters. And the story goes from there. And also a novella, which is a safari to Africa. And on the surface, it's the safari and what they see and they do. And underneath, it's the psychological, the emotional aspects of these two people on this trip. It's a love triangle. So it's a totally other thing. I'm having fun with exploring different kinds of writing.
These are not the novel and the novella are not for first graders.
Absolutely not, no.
You have titles for them, and do you have a projected publication date? Or are you finished, in fact?
Right. Well, I don't know. Is a book ever finished? We can always keep working on it and editing it. I have found a publisher in Texas, and I'm deciding whether or not I want to go with that particular publisher. That's for the Five Wishes book. So in the meantime, with COVID-19, I'm hesitant. How are people going to even know it's out there?
So Five Wishes is the title of the novel.
Of the novel.
And the novella?
Is the safari.
Oh, the safari.
Right. And of course, those are working titles. Once a publisher gets a hold of them, they might decide to name it something completely different.
Yes.
You know? Yeah. But in the meantime, I wanted to share that I'm continuing to read. I'm always reading.
Great.
And it's interesting to find out what people read. I've gone back to great world literature, reading Gilgamesh, the oldest known writing that was found on cuneiform tablets and translated into English, about the Epic of Gilgamesh and all those things that happened to him. And The Exiles by Christina Klein. And it's about people from England going to Australia, all the criminals that started the country, the continent of Australia. And The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. I thought, well, let's go back and look at that again after all these years. And then I rounded out with something fun like Alexander McCall Smith's books. And he wrote a funny book called My Italian Bulldozer, which my husband said sounded interesting. Yeah, the heavy and the light.
So you've been very busy in the last 6 months of COVID lockdown.
And gardening.
And gardening, yes.
And gardening, yeah, watering mostly because we're in a drought. Not now though. We had 3.8 inches of rain last night.
Is that how much? I know it came down and our basement's suffering right now.
Oh, that's why.
Ancient house and an ancient leaky basement.
Oh.
But I'm glad for the rain.
Oh, me too. So, of course, I belong to a couple of writing associations. People might want to know who are out there.
Sure.
There's a place called the Room to Write in Wakefield, Reading actually on the line, and the International Women's Writing Group. They hosted every year at Endicott College a 1-week writing programs with all kinds of topics and speakers. This year it was canceled. The Authors Guild Foundation, and they give you a lot of support with legal documents and contracts and things like that when you're working with publishers and what to be aware of. So each organization brings something of benefit to the writer. So in case someone out there who is writing wants to know about some organizations. And of course, Poets and Writers, great
Yes.
magazine, has a lot of information in it.
And a wonderful website too. Our website has all you could possibly want to know about.
And more.
Sending out, yes. Well, those sites, and mentioning Poets and Writers are excellent idea because they fit with what was to be my next question. What advice would you give to a writer who's starting out or who has some work and would like to get it out in public?
Right.
Children's stories or novels, novellas, anything.
Right. Well, there are organizations such as the ones I've just met who can be support groups. The Room to Write in Reading is Colleen at theroomtowrite.org. Colleen at theroomtowrite.org. And that organization is for writers and illustrators, and we have lots of illustrators in Massachusetts. So it's a support system for them. New writers, no writers, writers who haven't been published yet, as well as people who have published several books. They're a great group, and they have the website, and when they're able, they do meet in Reading. So that's the website I would recommend first to go to and for local.
Okay. Now, what personal advice would you give to a writer about when to write, how often to write, where to get ideas, about the nuts and bolts of sitting down?
Right. Well, I remember you're saying you write every day and you're so disciplined, and that's what they do recommend. Write every day, face the page. Maybe you get a line, maybe you get a paragraph. However, I have not been able to do that. I have spurts where I actually disappear for 6 to 8 weeks and go to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I write and I isolate myself. And that's when I work on something that's been up here for months or weeks, percolating,
Yes.
So, and if you can do it every day, fantastic. I just have not been able to do that. So
Yeah.
too much going on. Yeah.
Sometimes I question my discipline because it seems like wasted time if you stare at a blank page for hours. But I did ask the novelist Tim O'Brien what the key to his writing was, and he said, "But time."
Yes.
Meaning that.
Right.
Yeah, and
Yes, you're right. You're right. But in my case, I've had a lot of other things that have come across my my path, and the writing had to take a back seat for a long time. That's why there was such a long gap between this book and this book, because I was busy working full time and family and garden and so forth, and life gets in the way. But if you're a writer, a real writer like you, you'll do it every day.
Yeah, life has a terrible way of intruding itself.
Yeah.
Before we close, I want to go back to the book itself because that's
Okay.
the primary target here. In speaking to you, would you read the intro paragraphs that set the tone and the storyline of the book?
Okay. Well, the first page, April, and she is a real librarian. She's a children's librarian in Essex.
Oh, she is.
Yes, she sure is. And April, the children's librarian in Essex, called Featherfield Farm to ask Marge if she could bring a chicken to the Tuesday reading program. Next week's book was a classic children's story, The Little Red Hen, written by Margaret Zemek. April thought a live chicken would add to her program. And here we have the drawing of April in the library calling Featherfield Farm.
Now, I take it Featherfield Farm is a made-up name. That's not your farm.
That's not our farm, no. But my family liked the name, but they're not going to change it. I thought Featherfield Farm was an appropriate name for a chicken farm.
Yes.
Yes.
I recently had a guest on the writer's block whose name is Featherstone.
Oh yes. I went to school with a Featherstone.
That jumped out at me.
But there are some great drawings. And one of the things about this book is diversity. That children realize if we live here, wherever we live, that we don't all look the same, just like our chickens don't look the same. We don't have the same qualities, the same interests, the same strengths.
Right.
And so the book, that as I go around and read it and talk with children about chickens and about Flora, I want children to be happy who they are and to appreciate each other and their differences. And that we're not so different. We're all human beings. And
Those are wonderful goals, and I commend you and I commend the book. We're almost out of time, so I want to end with that commendation and add a sincere thank you to you, Karin Gertsch, for being on the writer's block and sharing details about Flora Has an Adventure, your new children's book. Thank you.
thank you, John, very much.
I also want to thank our TV audience for being with us this evening. If you've learned something about writing and working at writing and how to distribute writing from Karin Gertsch talking about Flora Has an Adventure, then the writer's block has done its job. Thanks for being with us, and I hope to see you again next week on the writer's block. Good night.